Since the beginning of video games, there's always been something very intriguing yet eerie about the concept of a game over. What does it all really mean? Is it a game over for you or the character you're playing as? And what happens to said character during a game over? Do they literally die and respawn? Are there several copies of the same character taking turns at beating the level? Or is it all just a game or a theatrical play breaking the fourth wall like Super Mario Bros. 3? It wasn't until Super Mario Maker released in 2015 that I actually pondered the question. As a kid, game over screens were sometimes the stuff of nightmares. It was just something you wanted to avoid at all costs. From Donkey Kong Country to Crash Bandicoot to Super Mario 64, Zelda Majora's Mask, etc., getting a game over not only made you feel like an utter failure, but could sometimes traumatize you for years. In a twisted way, it forced you to get good at the game and improve so you'd never have to see that dreaded screen again. Now, when it comes to disturbingly dark game overs, the Sonic games didn't disappoint, especially the classics. Besides the iconically menacing water drowning theme, the most terrifying game over definitely had to be the USA soundtrack of Sonic CD's Game Over. What exactly was Sega smoking when they made that?
I'm out of here!
As you all know, in the classics, whenever Sonic runs out of lives and gets a game over, he ends up in this black void called the continue screen. If you racked up enough points in your score, you earn yourself a continue, which comes in handy when you get a game over. What's more interesting is what happens to Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles when they're in this predicament. As you can tell from the distressed and impatient looks on their faces, they may be in some kind of limbo, waiting for the player to bring them back to life so they can continue their adventure. And before some of you dismiss this as just a dated mechanic that was in the classic Sonic games, it definitely makes a return in Sonic Lost World. We see Sonic land himself once again in the weird black void, only this time there's a white spotlight, which pays homage to the continue screen of Sonic 1. As a theorist, you tend to overanalyze things sometimes, but there's a huge reason to believe that the game over and continue screen in the Sonic games may be related to the white space in Sonic Generations. Matter of fact, they might be one and the same, meaning that in the events of Sonic Generations, are Sonic and his friends dead throughout majority of the game? I'm GamerGuy7aces, questioning the stranger things about the Sonic universe for 2.5 years. So without further ado, let's begin. I'll never forget the first time I saw the debut trailer of Sonic Generations. It was the most hyped I've ever been for a Sonic game, and every day I would check gaming news sites for more updates on the game. At the time, I was hoping to get this big story explaining how classic Sonic meets modern Sonic, along with great gameplay. Turns out that we got a great game, but with a very limited and kind of ambiguous story. At the time, I didn't care about the lack of story, and I still really don't, since I value gameplay more than story in my video games. But with Sonic Forces coming out, and classic Sonic coming back to the picture, this has caused a lot of fans to speculate and theorize about classic Sonic's purpose in that game, and if he's even the same Sonic he was in Generations. Now, Sonic Forces may boast a meatier and more menacing story of Dr. Eggman taking over 99% of the world, which is the first time he's ever been that successful in the video game canon. But after some deep analyzation, I'm led to believe that Eggman was unintentionally successful in Sonic Generations. It's already the first Sonic game where Dr. Eggman follows the same Monster of the Week formula without it retaliating against him. But he even takes it a step further, as this is the game where Dr. Eggman kills Sonic and his friends. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Eggman manages to use the Time Eater to wipe out Sonic and his friends in the beginning of Sonic Generations, starting with Classic Sonic. The thing is, I don't know if Eggman was even aware of this. Nevertheless, the whole game is one big game over and continue screen, as Sonic races against time, or lack thereof, to save all his friends from permanent death. Because as was clearly stated by Tails,
"Thanks, Sonic. I thought I was dead, floating without a body in a black limbo. Ugh, I'm gonna have nightmares for weeks."
So what Tails was trying to say was that he was basically a soul without a body, floating in a black limbo until Sonic saved him and restored his body. As creepy as that sounds, it's eerily similar to Dragon Ball Z in the Buu saga, when Majin Buu wiped out the entire human race on planet Earth. Instead of them having their bodies intact in the netherworld, they were nothing but little white flames, resembling souls, waiting to pass on to the afterlife. Only a few characters in Dragon Ball kept their bodies like Goku and the Z Fighters because they were stronger while the humans were weaker. So that would explain why Sonic was the only character that still had his body intact, along with Shadow and Silver, while the rest of his friends were soullessly dead. He also wasn't absorbed in the portals that Time Eater created, but was only knocked out by the monster. Also, it helps that Sonic's the main character and you're playing as him to save your friends. So even though Sonic wasn't straight up murdered by Time Eater, he still ended up in the white space-time. Now, what exactly is this white space-time, as it was called in the Japanese version of Sonic Generations? Well, the key word here is space-time, which I covered last year in my time loop paradox theory. So basically, since Time Eater had the power to erase time and space, he not only warped the space-time continuum, bringing back previous events that had been seemingly erased from the Sonic timeline, like Crisis City in Sonic 06, but Time Eater was also able to separate the Black Limbo world from the white space-time. So yes, the Black Limbo and white space-time are virtually the same, for the fact that you're nothing but a bodiless soul in this Black Limbo, while in the white space-time, you're a soulless body. So you need both dimensions to exist in your normal state. Sounds confusing as hell, doesn't it? Well, bear with me here, as we have to think outside of the box. Tails does drop some hints here and there if you really pay attention.
When that thing goes through time, it tears space apart, leaving the areas empty and dead, and sticking them in this weird white limbo. When the Sonics accelerate through time, they fix space, returning color and life.
So basically, this weird white limbo is the parallel of everything in the land of the living, as you can obviously tell from the familiar levels. This whole scenario definitely reminds me of the Netflix series Stranger Things, where the Upside Down is an alternate reality or dimension existing in parallel to the human world. It contains the same locations and infrastructure as the human world, but it is much darker, colder, foggier, and devoid of human life. A humanoid predator was also native to this dimension. In Sonic Generations, that predator is Time Eater, as he frequently pops in and out to terrorize the characters. So once the two Sonics restore color and life throughout the levels and defeat Time Eater, that's when they return back to the land of the living. So if we were to look at the proper timeline of Sonic Generations, it would be even shorter than it already is. Classic Sonic runs through Green Hill, Time Eater surprise attacks and kills him, then proceeds to do the same to modern Sonic and all his friends during the birthday picnic. And after a lengthy game over, they all end up where we began, Sonic's birthday party. But the big question is, what happened to the two Eggmans? It's evident that they both died too and end up in the same white space-time. So how did they escape? That may be answered in Sonic Forces, but we may never know. Now, in Stranger Things, although the character Will Byers was eventually rescued and returned to normal life, his time in the Upside Down had severely changed him, in ways which remain largely mysterious. So, before I go, I ask all of you, was the ending to Sonic Generations really a satisfying ending, or an ominous one? Can you really escape the Upside Down? It's up to you, the player, to decide.